Feels like this is slightly over. Move it that way. Hello everyone. Don't know what I've done here. Let me just press record. Don't know what I've done here. I can see a slither down the side there, so this obviously isn't straight. Or I need to move around. Probably somewhere there. Oh well, doesn't matter too much. Just trying to frame it. For anyone interested, those were the trainers I was talking about in the other stream the other day. And I've got some Mr. Plough ones down over there as well. Right. Have a bit of drink. I've not that long ago washed my hair and it's gone all weird while it's drying. So let's start this. Yeah, my Pinky and Brain shirt. Everything feels right. I moved things around a bit, I think. That's not aiming at my mouth. Weird. What am I thinking? Yeah, let's start this. So obviously, anyone who's new to all of this, I do a bit of chatting and then get ideas from yourselves to create a sleep meditation with. And then at 10:30, I aim to start a sleep meditation. I do my best to get it started on time, but it does partly depend on what's going on in the live chat. So if you just want to skip straight to that and you're watching this back afterwards, there will be a timestamp in the first comment and in the description for whenever it ends up happening. I'm not going to read a fairy tale or anything this week. That took a very long time extra last week when I did that. I'm hoping my computer over there will be finished processing before I start the story. So yeah, obviously, if anyone finds this interesting or helpful, feel free to give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here and think, oh, I want more of this, then feel free to subscribe. So yeah, hope everyone's been doing well. This feels like it's right in my face. I don't recall it normally feeling quite so in my face. I don't know what I've done with my seating. The chair that I have the laptop on, that's in front of me, let's try and move that along a bit. I used that to actually sit on. So this chair that's in front of me, over at my computer over there, because I was working late over the last few days and very long hours. And so I thought, oh, I actually need the seat to sit on rather than standing and having a seat with the computer on it. But now, today, I've just gone and put it all back on here and everything feels slightly wrong. But hopefully it'll all be fine. It just feels like that's right in my eye. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think this mic has got a name. Hello, good to see you here. Yeah, I don't want that either. So I decided, so I've got a standing desk because obviously that's healthier, but it's not healthier if I'm standing on exactly the same spot for like 15 or 18 hours or something, as I've discovered. So I'm obviously no longer young. But I do have some 2 bar stool type chairs that are tool chairs, and I got them. Well, I got them as a pair because I just wanted to, but I got them because it didn't feel right getting just one. But I got them so that I could sit on them when I just needed to, when I knew I was doing long hours. So I had anticipated this. It's just that since then I've started doing these live streams and needing somewhere to sit down to do the live streams and needing something for my computer to go on while I'm talking, because obviously I can't just stand here holding this. Um, yes, it's not obviously good for young people to stand for that long either. But when you're younger, you obviously, people do shop work and stuff and stand behind tills, or they do. For example, I used to wash up, and most of my job for 15 hours a day at a time would be, 15 hours a day, 6 days a week, would be standing at a dishwasher loading it. I would then walk to the end of it and then stand still while I unload it. And if it was really busy and there was two of us on the dishwasher, then you wouldn't walk to the end of it because you'd have one of you stood at one end loading and one of you stood at the other end unloading. And so you wouldn't move for perhaps 15 hours, just literally loading or unloading a machine, and never have a problem. Yeah, I've never heard of anti fatigue mats. They sound interesting. I could do with something that's anti fatigue. Anti fatigue anything, I'm sure would be good. But yeah, so I don't know how they work. Yes. If someone would pay me enough money, I would, in a heartbeat, instantly go back to doing that job. If someone said, work in a pot wash, 15 hours a day, 6 days a week, we'll pay you enough money to cover all your bills and everything, in a heartbeat, I would drop everything and say, I will do that as a job. Um, yeah, I never had a problem, particularly with it being hot or tiring. Um, Noisy, I had a problem with it being very noisy, having a machine running constantly. But I would just go inside my mind. So the whole time, the good thing about that kind of work is that you literally don't have to think about anything. Your body knows what it has to do. So you're in your head doing all of your quantum physics stuff and all the other stuff that goes on in your mind while your body just cracks on with the job. And then you get to the end of the shift and you haven't had to interact with anyone other than incredibly minimally, where people put stuff down for you to wash and then they leave again. You don't have to talk to anyone at all. Um, Literally, you just stand there loading a machine and then unloading a machine, and then you go home. No need for any interaction with human beings or anything, which is great. Um, yeah, so it's good to be on autopilot. Well, my head, while I would be standing at the pot wash machine back when I was a teenager, I think I stopped doing the job by the time before I was 20, um, for that specific job. Yeah, I would be thinking of quantum physics, thinking about theories of how gravity might work, thinking about the nature of the universe, all those sort of things. And that would be what I'd get on up to in my head while my body just cracks on with the job. And if anyone ever came into my venue, I would just glare at them until they leave and then carry on again. See, I'd imagine that a pad that squishes is probably going to be as bad as kind of the memory foam things or anything else padded, that it'd be a nightmare to walk on, um, because of it absorbing everything. And if you stand there too long, you sink into it anyway, and it becomes almost pointless. Oh, I definitely don't think of myself as smart. I've not got a degree or anything like that. Yep, I used to literally make people think I do not want to come into that room. I would just glare at them and not say a word, just with a deadpan expression, and wait until they leave the room again. It was a holiday camp. It was Butlins, which is, for those who don't know, a UK chain of holiday sites, um, where it's got like restaurants and bars and swimming pool and all sorts of things, all the entertainment on one site. And I worked in a venue at Bognor Regis, in the Bognor Regis Butlins, that's not there anymore, but called the Plaza. And so it was, I think, 15 different eateries and a pot wash, which obviously is what I was in. And I was initially put with customers when I started working there, but I'm not particularly customer friendly. I don't know if that's the right term. I'm not unfriendly, but I'm not customer friendly. Customers aren't always right. And so why would you treat them as if they are? It's a completely weird concept to me. So reasonably quickly, I was moved from being a customer facing member of staff to being in a room on my own, with no colleagues or customers to have to deal with, which was great. And there was plenty of, so the 15 venues, I can't remember them all, but there was like a burger bar that's a typical kind of McDonald'sy type of thing. Um, there was a section where it's like you just to walk around restaurant bits, that customers would get a tray and they'd walk past different counters and they would just put stuff on the tray or ask for certain hot food or whatever, like roast dinners and things, and then go and pay. There was a kebab shop, um, for your kebabs. There was a pancake place for getting your pancakes. Um, jacket potato place for getting jacket potatoes. A donut place for getting your donuts. Mongolian barbecue. Um, a bar. I can't think what else was there. A bakery. Yeah, I've worked for, obviously most of my working career was with the local authority, so local government. Um, but I was no good when it came to. I would just walk out of work, when it came to functions and things. If they ever said, "Oh, we've got a busy function, we need you to help being a waiter or something," I would say, "I quit then," and I would just walk out of work right there and then. And the number of times that my manager would turn up at my flat to try and convince me to come back into work and to not just sit in the flat, sort of not working. Um, yeah, Mongolian barbecue's fine. It's food is food. It's just thrown down on something, cooked, and then eaten. Yeah, the time when my work found that it was really a big issue with me being kind of honest with customers, or not just honoring things with customers, was around, when customers would say I'd given them the wrong change, and I would know I gave them the right change, and they would say, "No, you gave me the wrong change." And so I would say, "Okay, then we will stop the queue. We'll cash up the till, and if the till's wrong, you're right. If the till's right, I'm right." But when you've got like 1,500 people coming through in a kind of 2 hour-ish lunch period, 2 to 3 hour lunch period, um, stopping the till doesn't make you, one of the tills doesn't make you particularly favourable with your own management. Um, but there'd be no way that I would leave the till, you know, just give the customer money when they're probably wrong. And the other stupid thing, obviously, was that if your till, so lots of people would use the till throughout the day, but only one person would sign responsibility for that till, and that'd be whoever's first on shift. So if you were unfortunately the first person on shift and you'd signed for the till, if at the end of the day that till is wrong, you have to make the difference up out of your wages. And this is back in the day where you earned £1.92 an hour. So, you know, you could work all day, say a 15-hour day, you don't even earn £30 in that day. And if your till's £20 wrong, you end up giving the company £20 of your own pay. And after tax, it means that you've made no money that day. So there was no way that I'd be letting, just saying to a customer, okay, you can have the money. Um, yeah, obviously, you can prove it. You cash up a till, and it'll either be right or wrong, unless you're terrible with the money, in which case where it's going to be wrong regardless. Yeah, I definitely agree not to take anything personally. But it is very difficult when you're on incredibly low wages, and um, someone, if the till's wrong, because the till will be wrong for all sorts of reasons. There's a lot of times when managers would want petty cash for a different till in a different part of the one of the 15 venues, and they would just come along and take some money out of one till, not leave any notes or reference to this, and wander off to another till to put the change in another till, and then your till's down, and you have to pay that out of your wages, even though another till is obviously now up. But then normally the managers would just pocket whatever it was up by when they cash up. Um, and the member of staff who's on the till is the one that ends up losing out. Although I did become very unpopular because I think I've written about this in my autobiography, Look Into My Eyes, where somebody openly, because I'm quite quiet generally, I try to avoid talking to people, so I'm a better listener than I am talker. And so somebody was bragging about how they were stealing from the company and how they were fiddling the tills and what the system was that they were using, and how everyone is so thick. It was one of the managers saying everyone is so thick no one would be able, so middle managers saying everyone's so thick no one would be able to catch them and what have you. And so I got them sacked. And it turned out, unfortunately, that their entire staff team in that venue were doing exactly the same scam. And so the whole staff team got sacked as well. And I went round their flat a few days later, and they were having a bit of a rant about how they'd lost their job, and if only they knew who did it, and they were going to go and have a go at whoever did it, and all this sort of rubbish. And they said, "Do you know who did it?" And so obviously I said, "Well, yes, of course I know who did it." And they said, "Who?" "Well, me. I did it." And so he obviously said, he was making me a cup of tea at the time. He said, "I don't think I'm going to be making you a cup of tea, and you can leave." We've got on fine ever since. Not that I see him that often. It's 20 odd years ago, but um, I would see him around through the early 2000s while he was in the area still, and we would say hello and what have you. But yeah, it was just kind of what do you expect? You're stealing, and so you're going to get caught. I'm glad I've unpixelated. Um, yeah, one of my managers at Butlins, my first meeting of him was him standing up off the ground, um, having knocked on the fire door of the pot wash. He used to have this thing where, to find out whether staff are actually working or not, he would just wander around to the fire doors of the different venues, knock on the fire door to be let into that venue, and obviously then see if what's going on in that bit of the venue when he came in. And I had both arms full of saucers at the time, and he knocked on the fire door. So obviously I kicked the fire door bar, the bit that opens it, and it whacked him in the face, and he landed on the floor. And that was my first. He then just stood up and said, "Hi, I'm Rab. I'm your new manager. Let's hope our next meeting is a bit better." So he was good humoured. But yeah, that was my first meeting with that manager. And he's the manager that every time I walked out, he would constantly come to my flat and scream up, because I didn't have a working bell, because why would I want people to be able to get hold of me? So he would come around to my flat, and this is before mobile phones and things, and he would scream up the side of the building until I eventually respond to let him know that I'm actually there and I can hear him. And he would keep doing that every single day until I went back into work again. And that's the only reason why I kept staying in that job, because he kept on encouraging me back to work when I would walk out because of one issue or another. Yeah, I'm polite, so I'll just kick a door in their face instead. But yeah, he was a great manager. I've no idea what's ever happened to him in the 25 years or whatever since. But definitely one of the better managers that I've had, because he was aware of my limitations and the things I really, really struggled at, and was willing to dive in and help. And like, there was one situation where I threw a little bit of a strop, and I just said, "Oh, sod this, I'm not doing any work." And I sat down on the sink, and so he dragged in a manager from one of the other venues, and him and the other manager loaded and unloaded the pot wash machine and just did all the work for me, while I just sat there watching, stropping about something or other. I think it was hygiene or something, that there was some hygiene issues in the venue, and I was responsible for it, but not allowed to do anything about it because it costs money, and I'm not responsible for the money, but I'm responsible for getting blamed by the hygiene manager, the sort of the whole of Butlins, if those issues weren't fixed. So yeah, so that's yeah, he was a very, very good manager. Yeah, I showed them at the beginning. I can show them again. So the Simpsons. And I've got Mr. Plough ones, but they're still in their box until winter. I don't really need them yet. Well, I personally, all the health and safety issues should have been fixed. My big issue was that they weren't. It's one of those stupid situations where you always have a fool guy in a business. And so in that specific situation, I was the fool guy, where no one's going to spend money, but I would get the sack if the issue isn't addressed. And because I was the one that was officially responsible for it, but I had no responsibility or ability to be allowed to authorize to get the health and safety issues fixed that all cost money. That was down to people even higher up than the manager of the venue. So we were breaching health and safety regulations with no one present being allowed to do anything to stop breaching health and safety regulations. And to me, that's totally wrong. The expectation was that the health and safety person will go away and it won't be an issue. And that's just not the way my brain thinks. My brain thinks if there's a problem, fix it. Don't just have it that, well, if there's backlash, it's okay because you'll get the sack and the rest of us will be fine. Um, but as I say, given the choice, if I got a phone call tomorrow saying we would love you from anywhere, saying we would love you to come and work in this pot wash that's, say, within walking distance of me, in this pot wash, we'll pay you enough to live on. I would give all of this up. I would stop doing literally everything I do and just do that. Go into work every day, do my hours alone in a room, not having to interact with anyone at all, and then go home every day. And I would do that until I have to retire or whatever. Yeah, so it is a bit of a pain when that happens. Right, let me start off my page and then I'll get some ideas from you. So there's no point starting to say ideas just yet because my eyes are down and I won't see them. I think this is 42. I think I've said 42. Right. Let me just make sure the cursor's out the way so I can read writing. Yes, today will be the answer to the universe. Hiking. So I can see ideas now. I'm looking up again. Yeah, a group of butterflies then. So just butterflies I'll put down. Anyone who's completed or played through Last of Us Part 2, there's a scene in there where Ellie is trying to guess what she's got for her birthday, and she says, "Oh, have I got a bunch of kittens?" And Joel says that it's not called a bunch of kittens and what have you. And she said, "Why can't you just call it a bunch? It is a bunch of kittens." A nun. Right, so you want a nun in it. Mountains. Yeah, Joel says it's a litter of kittens. So why do you call it a litter of kittens? So that's the name for a bunch of kittens. Well, if you can call it a bunch of kittens, why don't you just call it a bunch? Yeah, I don't know what's going to make it into the story, obviously, until the story has ended, and then I forget the story almost as soon as it's ended, and then I don't realise what was in it until I listen to it back. Well, I try and write down everything I see, but I can't obviously always get everything into the story, and I'm trying to create the stories while I can't sort of stop for ages and think, right, let's check off what I've read, what I've included, and what I haven't. On Wednesday, it's 1 year of me having my channel as a sleep meditation channel. For anyone interested, right? I still have room for some more ideas. I've got no plans specifically for celebrating. I can't think of anything to do, so I don't know. Just seeing how my computer's coming on with processing. Right, I have a bit of room for any more ideas. If not, then I will just start with what I've got. Don't know what that is. Right, that might be enough stuff. And someone asked about ponytail. My hair just about goes into the tiniest of ponytails if someone tries. So let me move that from behind me. Move the armrests out of the way. Yeah, it definitely won't have a man bun or anything stupid like that. And hopefully my computer, it's very noisy to me, but hopefully it won't be too noisy on the recording. If I sit back and point that towards me. Make sure I can read everything. I have two levels of handwriting, bad and terrible. So, just take a moment to allow your eyes to close and allow yourself to begin to relax. And as you begin to relax, I'm just going to tell this guided sleep meditation in the background. And while I tell this sleep meditation, I don't know whether you'll drift deeper to the sound of my voice or the spaces between my words. And as you begin to drift comfortably and relax to sleep, you can have a sense of being on a train. And it's an old fashioned train, it's a steam train. And all of the wood of the train is carved so ornately with such incredible craftsmanship. And you can hear that train as it clickety clacks over the track. And you're on a long journey. Then you're travelling out from London on this steam train, heading north. And as you leave the lights of London, so everything outside the window gets darker and darker. And you can see the shadowy figures of the trees passing by the sides of the train, out of the windows. You can notice the full moon illuminating distant hills and countryside. You can notice pockets of towns with small areas of lights dotted among those fields. And you're on this journey with a friend. And as it's getting later and later, while you make this journey, you relax back into the seat. You have a table between you and your friend. You have some bits put down on that table. You tuck yourself up into the corner near the window and the edge of the seat. You wrap yourself up in the most snuggly, warm coat. And you just close your eyes for a minute. And with your eyes closed, you can feel that movement of the train continuing along the track, hearing the clickety-clack of the train on those tracks. You can hear the mumble of other people on the train in the carriage. And you feel the sense almost like being rocked gently asleep. And you begin to comfortably drift and float into a reverie. And this train journey is a long train journey. It'll be travelling all the way up to Scotland. And you don't have a bed to sleep in during this journey, which is why you're going to sleep here. And you'll try and drift asleep and stay asleep all night long, so that you wake up just as the train arrives in Scotland and as you near your destination. And while you drift into your reverie, you start to have this sense of paddling a boat down a river, almost like the rocking of that train on the tracks becomes the rocking of the boat on the water. And you begin to hear the sound of the oars as you push the water back, raise those oars out of the water, hearing the slight splashing of the water dripping off of the oars before the plopping sound as you put those oars back into the water and push them through the water again, propelling that boat forward little by little. And you can feel the warmth of the sun and begin to have a sense of your surroundings and discovering yourself rowing down a river, seeing forest on either side and a lush green bank between the water's edge and the start of the forest. And you realize that you're having a lucid dream, that you're aware of dreaming and aware that this is a dream, but at the same time having a level of control over the dream, an autonomy in this dream. And so you continue going with the dream, rowing down this river. And after a while of rowing, you pull over to the riverbank. You climb out of the boat. You pull it up onto the shore a little. And you can hear the sounds of the forest, the rustling leaves, the sounds of birds, the distant sounds of monkeys and other animals in the forest. And you can discover a sense of deep relaxation from those sounds, from the greens and the blue sky, the colours of nature. And you set up a camp on the edge of the riverbank. You gather some wood from the forest. You shave off some of the outside of some of the wood. You start a campfire and you sit by that campfire listening to it crackling and popping, feeling its warmth and noticing the sun setting, the changing colours from the blue sky changing to oranges and reds, and then to a dark blue, and then noticing the stars in the sky, bright white and twinkling, and noticing how, as the sky changes colour, so the animals that are making sounds change as well. The daytime animals quieten down, and certain nighttime sounds begin to increase. And you notice that the sound of the water of the river changes as the temperature of the air above the water changes, that it sounds more relaxing and softer as it flows by. Then you appreciate that glow of the fire far more now the sun has set, and the warmth from that fire. And you relax back into the camp that you've built. And as you're aware that this is a lucid dream, you can begin to have the thought of the unusual nature of falling asleep and dreaming about falling asleep. And almost with a smile on your face, you relax back in that camp as the sound of that crackling fire, the sounds of nature, the sounds of that water flowing by. And you drift so comfortably, so peacefully asleep. And the next morning, when you awaken feeling so incredible, so invigorated, so full of energy and ready for the day ahead, you're surprised to be greeted by the most beautiful swarm of butterflies with almost electric blue incandescent wings that seem to shimmer and almost sparkle in the morning sunlight. Almost making it look like there's blue sparkling diamonds flying through the sky, seemingly erratically, just shimmering there. Discovering it's almost hypnotic with the amount of silence that's there. And you watch as they fly by, and then they begin to spread out, and they head into the trees and seem to land in the trees. And you notice more and more butterflies appearing and then flying into specific trees until those trees almost seem to vibrate with twinkling, sparkling coming from the wings of those butterflies that seem to almost outnumber the leaves of those trees, making the trees almost take on an electric blue hue. And then once those butterflies have settled in, You instinctively continue your journey, but you continue on foot for a little while as you head along the riverbank a bit before turning into the forest and beginning to push your way through that forest. And to start with, it's hard going pushing through the forest, but as you get in the swing of things, you find it gets easier and easier. And after a while, you find yourself coming out into a clearing. And in this clearing, you can see an ancient temple that looks like an old pyramid. You walk over towards that temple, and you first of all walk around the temple. You run your hands around the stonework, really appreciating and feeling that stonework under your fingertips. And then you go to the entrance. You push open a stone door, which seems to slide open far easier than you would expect for a stone door. You light a torch, hearing that flame burst to life on the end of that stick. And you walk inside the temple. And as you walk inside the temple, so you can notice the way the light dances and the shadows move around the walls. You can notice the breeze softly blowing through the entrance, down into the chamber, past your cheeks, around your neck, almost softening and relaxing the muscles around your neck, almost like the gentlest, softest massage, almost like fingertips, just gently encouraging the muscles to relax, giving you a sign that being here is safe, is a calm and relaxing place to be. And you notice the way the sound has changed from outside the temple to inside the temple. The temperature has cooled slightly, and you can hear each footstep gently echo off the walls as you walk deeper and deeper into the chamber. And after a while, the chamber opens out, almost like there's a large hall, and in the middle, you see a hole. You head over to that hole. You shine that torch down the hole, and you can see that it's a long way down, and there's a rope ladder leading down there. And so you carefully navigate your way down that rope ladder deeper and deeper beneath this temple. And when you turn around and you look around you, you can see symbols all over the walls. And they all seem to somehow intuitively make sense, although you don't feel that you've ever seen them before. Almost like some kind of proto-language, something that just instinctively seems to make sense to you as you look at it, even if you've never seen it in the past. And you work your way round and realize it's telling the story of an ancient civilization. It's telling the story of a civilization that was given knowledge from people from the stars. And you continue to read this story, walking around this underground cavern. It talks about these aliens landing and educating about where they came from, educating about facts about the earth, sharing different knowledge. It talks about some of the technology that they had, things which made no sense back then. And then it talks about them leaving and then becoming worshipped almost like gods, hoping for a return one day, and always looking up to the stars and building temples pointing up to the stars, trying to align the temples with the specific stars in the area that the aliens came from. And then, once you've walked all the way around, almost back to where you started, you see that the last thing seems to almost be a ritual that seems to say that there was a magic spell that you could do to connect with the gods. And then it describes it. And it says to use the chair in the middle of the room. And so you look over, you check out that chair, and you realize that the chair is actually like a curved, body formed rock that looks like it's carved out of a single stone. And then you read what you have to do. It tells you to sit on that chair, and that the chair is orientated towards the relevant star. And you're to focus your attention on that star, which is at an angle just above your head. And with all of your attention on that star, you're to count back in your mind. And as you count back in your mind, you extend each out breath, deepening and relaxing yourself, entraining your brain waves to connect with a targeted frequency beam of psychic energy from the aliens from that world. And you don't know whether this will work, but you decide to give it a go anyway. And so you go and sit on that chair. You put the torch in a holder beside you. You find that chair surprisingly comfortable for one made entirely out of stone. You realize as your fingertips touch the stone around you that that chair, that stone, seems to be so soft, almost like touching soft rubber, except that it's got the firmness of stone. And you close your eyes And you begin to breathe, calming yourself down a little. And then you focus on where that star is, just above your head. As you begin to count backwards. And as you count backwards with each out-breath, so you drift deeper and deeper relaxed. And the deeper and deeper relaxed you become, the greater the connection you feel. Almost as if you have this sense of energy beginning to synchronize. Almost like where you have two waveforms, two notes, and you're trying to turn the dials, and you can hear how those notes are gradually getting closer and closer to each other. You can hear the difference between each frequency until all of a sudden you can just hear the single frequency. You just have the one note. And you suddenly connect with that frequency. And you realize that you're not connecting with other aliens. You're connecting with an automated psychic beacon that seems to pulse out knowledge. And you can feel that knowledge passing down into your head, down through your body, almost filling you with that knowledge and wisdom of the universe. And you suddenly have this sense of the word fortitude. And you wonder about that word. And that knowledge passes through you. And while it's passing through you and into you and filling you up, and you can feel yourself learning wisdom, you notice that it's passing into you almost like it's got colours, like it starts working through the colours of the rainbow. And you can feel a sense, almost like you have an aura around you, changing colours, until all that knowledge is within you. And then that beacon seems to stop. And as the beacon stops, your eyes open and you find yourself on that seat. And you climb off the seat and you feel slightly lightheaded with all the knowledge that's just entered into you. And you start thinking and introspecting about that knowledge. And you realize that you seem to have access to everything that's just happened. And you pick up the torch and you find your way out of the chamber, back up into the main part of this pyramid, of this temple, and all the way out of the temple. And as you exit the temple, so you hear the sound of a train whistle. You suddenly feel the ground rocking slightly. And then you hear the clickety-clack of the track. And then you can feel the coolness of the window on the temple of your head. And you gently open your eyes and you find yourself sitting opposite your friend on that train. You see that it's not yet morning, but the sun is probably not far under the horizon, because there's a little bit of light outside, enough for you to be able to see that a thick fog that's low to the ground seems to have appeared around the countryside. And you can see the way the train is passing through that fog, the way it's almost spraying up like something passing through water. And you can see when you look up that the sky is still clear. There's just that very thick, low layer of fog. You can see the tops of trees, the tops of tall bushes as you pass by them, and gradually see more and more light beginning to appear, knowing that morning is approaching. And then, suddenly, something unusual happens. You see what almost looks like lightning within the fog. And there's no sound to that lightning, just flashing light within the fog and zigzagging lights within the fog. And then in an instant, there's darkness. And then almost an instant later, it seems to be the middle of the day. And you find yourself on a train in unfamiliar surroundings. You're looking out the window still, and yet what you're looking at now is a mountainous area, but not Scotland. It's not the area you're expecting to see. And even if it was, it shouldn't have changed this much in such a short space of time. And you notice that others on the train, who are also awake, are equally as perplexed by this. And the train slows down and comes to a halt. And a guard walks down the train and is telling everyone in each carriage, there's nothing to worry about. Something strange seems to have happened. And they're just looking at what that is. The driver's just trying to figure this out. And so you and your friend get up and walk to the door in the carriage. And you want to go outside and investigate, see where you are. And so you tentatively open the door, peer back down the track towards the back of the train. And you can see back there seems to be almost like a black hole on the track that seems to have some fog around its base. What looks like electricity sparking off of that hole. And you get out of the train and you walk towards that. And then you see somebody appear who explains that a science experiment has gone wrong. That they're working on trying to make things invisible by manipulating electromagnetism. And they had to pump more and more power into their experiment. And they were trying to hit a critical amount of power. And then they hit that amount of power. But instead of the thing they were making invisible turning invisible, it seemed to open up a rift through space-time. And that seemed to open up here. And that it didn't just open up one rift, that by manipulating and twisting electromagnetism, it somehow warped space-time, opening up 8 different rifts, almost all in a circle around the central experiment. And they've been travelling around to get to each rift, to check each one out, and to make sure that nothing comes through them. Only this one happened to be right on a train track. And unfortunately, a train was coming along at exactly the point where it suddenly appeared. And the train had no way of stopping or avoiding it. And so here they are. And you look at those scientists, and you can instantly notice they definitely don't look like they're from your time period. They seem to be from a long time in the future. And just some of the words they use don't really make sense. You can understand them, but they seem to just talk a little differently, like their language is slightly different, yet familiar. And so you ask about how to get back, and they say that they'll need you to go back through with the train, but they also need to close these rifts, and that they could perhaps do with your help and the help of others to make sure that everything goes back the way it was. They want to know what it was about these locations, as they want to be able to interview the people who've come through. They want to know about the experiences. And so they check out that nothing else is likely to come through this rift. They make sure that no other trains will be coming along that bit of track. And then they begin to interview people on the train. They find out in one carriage, people are carrying on, almost unaware of what's been going on, almost unaware the train's even stopped. They're just so busy celebrating a birthday, having a bunch of people standing around singing happy birthday to one of the children, giving them a cake, that child blowing out the candles, and then focusing on opening presents, as if it's a typical morning. And you ask why they don't seem bothered, and they say that it's one of the children's birthday, they're carrying on, things will get sorted in their own time. It's not a problem. It's just more to talk about and share about the experience. And then in other carriages, there are people complaining about how they want to get to their destination, and then the staff attempting to talk to them and tell them everything will be okay. They'll be on their way shortly. And these scientists talk to the different people, ask them about their experiences, what they saw, what happened, what they were doing beforehand. And there's no easy way to get the train back through the rift, because the train struggles with reversing with all the carriages behind it. So it has to make a journey further down the line to a junction where it can pass onto a different track that curves around and then comes back to another junction that allows them to rejoin this track again. But then when they're back through the hole, back through that rip in space time, they'll be facing the wrong direction. So they're then going to have to somehow safely do a similar thing on the other side. And the driver's talking about how unfeasible that is at the other side. And so they have to try and figure out an alternative way back through that rift. And in the end, they find that the only way is that all the people will have to go through separately to be back in their own time. So as they get interviewed, before it gets sealed, they all step back into their own time without a train. And then scientists say that they'll use some of their machinery to push that train backwards once all the people are off of it. And so when everyone's back through, they all stand aside and they can see through that hole. Advanced looking technology that seems to almost hover just above the ground, almost hovering on blue light. And that blue light seems to make the lightest humming sound. And they begin to push that train backwards, while having other machines steadying the carriages. And part of it pushes on each individual carriage, as well as just the engine. Because part of the problem is that pushing on the engine, which is the heaviest part, can push and end up damaging the carriages behind it. And so it seems to be such a slow process of that train just carefully inching its way back into this reality, and noticing how the sun has now long risen and is already almost on the way to setting again. And eventually, just as the sun's setting again, having spent an entire day not moving any further than this rip in space and time, and the whole train is through, and the scientists double check that everyone is on the right side of the rift. Before then, doing something on their side, and that rift vanishes. And you turn to your friend And you ask them if they just saw what you saw, if they've just spent the day having the same experience. Because although you know that you have, a part of you feels you need to hear it from someone else. And they tell you that they have just shared this experience with you, and that no one will probably believe them when all the passengers try and tell others what happened, and everyone boards the train again. And the train continues on its journey. But this time, you don't fall asleep as the train continues on. You arrive in Scotland, and rather than arriving around the middle of the day, you arrive very late at night, many hours before the sun's rising. And you leave the train. You head off to a hotel that you're staying at. You sit in the bar for a while, talking with your friend. You have a meal. One of you eating kidney, the other eating lasagna. And then you head off to bed. You go up to your room. You find room 42. Open the door. You get that smell of a hotel room in an old hotel full of wooden beams. You lie down on the bed, the most comfortable bed you've ever slept in, and you wonder whether that bed is extra comfy because of the journey you've just had, because of the couple of days you've had, because your last night's sleep was leaning on a window, and you sink so comfortably into that bed, and you drift peacefully asleep. And the next day, you awaken in good time for breakfast, and you sit at the desk in the hotel room. You pick up the most beautiful fountain pen that's on that desk, and the hotel's own notepads. And you decide to write with that pen, and you can hear the slight scratching sound of that pen as it moves across the pad. You can see the ink going from wet to gradually drying on the page before your eyes, and feel the flowing of that ink through the pen as you continue to write. And so you continue to write that note, just writing down your thoughts from the last few days, writing down what you've been grateful for, what you look forward to. And a smile can come to your mind while you read that back to yourself, before tearing off the sheet of paper from the pad, folding that sheet of paper, and keeping that sheet of paper on you while you leave the room, head down for breakfast. And you meet your friend at breakfast, and then both, after breakfast, head off out, feeling the coolness of the air outside the hotel. seeing the Scottish Highlands and hiking your way up into those highlands, looking over the lochs, smelling that fresh, clean air, feeling the wind on your face, and just enjoying being in nature. And then as you hike across the highlands, you see someone walking towards you. And as they walk towards you, you look forward to seeing the dog that they've got walking beside them. But as they get closer, you notice it isn't a dog. They've got a cat walking along beside them. And they stop and they say good morning. And as they stop and say good morning, you look down at the cat. You see the cat has stopped also, and the cat is now weaving around this person's legs. And they notice you looking at the cat. And they say that the cat, Tyrone, goes everywhere with them. That Tyrone loves adventures. And so you lean down and you crouch down, and Tyrone comes up to you, knocks his head against you. You put out your hand, he rubs his head against your hand, then his neck, wiggles his ears, rubs his side against you, and his tail. As you let his tail slide through your hand, before Tyrone turns around and comes back to rub himself against you again on the other side of his body, before then seeming to almost lose the use of his legs and flopping down like a heavy weight onto your feet and starting to purr. And you almost instinctively have that sense of stroking his belly, his side, and you can feel the warmth from him. And after a little while of stroking his belly, even though he's purring away, suddenly he seems to clasp at your hand in a playful way, almost seeming to wrestle with your hand. And then you know you have to continue your journey, and they have to continue theirs. And so you stand up, and you can see that Tyrone really wants to stay and play. And you know that you can't and they can't. And so you continue your journey. And once you're at the highest point you can go, you look out over the view. You close your eyes, breathe in some of that fresh air, breathing that deeply into your lungs. Almost like breathing in relaxation, and then breathing out any stress or tension. And then you gaze down over a loch, and you can see that it'd be very easy to make the journey down to one of those lakes down there. And so the two of you head down towards that lake. And when you arrive at it, you put your hand into the water on the lake's edge. And you feel that that water seems to be surprisingly warm, that you're expecting it to be cold. Then your friend explains that this specific lake is over an area of hot rock, and so it always stays much warmer than the surrounding areas. And so you get yourself kitted up for going for a dip in the lake. You tentatively walk into the lake, and once you're up to your waist, you lie back and you close your eyes. You just feel that weightlessness of floating on the lake, warmth of the sun on your face, the coolness of the breeze on your cheeks, the feeling of that water tickling your skin with the surface tension, and that water being of a temperature that's just right to make it so that with your eyes closed, as the water becomes more still, as you become more still, you can almost not realize you're floating in water. The temperature is so similar to your own that you just don't notice it. And you could be floating in space or anywhere. And you find it such a peaceful and relaxing experience. Then you hear a splash as your friend has come in the water as well. And then they do the same. And the two of you just float around for a while before heading back to shore and getting dressed far quicker than you got undressed because of the coolness of the air against your wet bodies. And then you see a little way along the shore is a cabin, and so you feel that maybe that would be a good place to warm up, having come out of that water. You head down to the cabin, and it doesn't look like there's anyone there, but you knock anyway, and no one answers. And so you open the door and say hello as you open the door. And the door gently creaks open. You walk into that cabin, and the cabin is dim with just the ambient light shining in through the windows. And as you open the door, you disturb some of the dust in the cabin and can see that dust dancing and floating in the beams of light through the windows. You walk over to the fireplace and you see that there's wood in the fireplace that can be lit. And so you light that fire, and instantly there's the most beautiful glow in this cabin. And with that glow, you begin to see more about what's in the cabin. You can see that there are bookshelves around all the walls, densely packed with old books. And you walk over to one of those shelves and you blow the dust off the old books. And as you blow that dust, so the dust seems to spread from the books, as if you've just blown glitter. It just seems to sparkle and seems to almost chime, almost like the softest bells have just been blown off that shelf. The tiniest, almost like microscopic bells, thousands of bells, all catching the light, sparkling and twinkling. As that chiming softly fades, and then you blow again on the dust. And this time you notice a very slight glowing around the books. And you wonder why you didn't notice that the first time, but then think perhaps you were just too preoccupied by the sparkling dust. And you pick one of those books off the shelf, and you carefully open that book. And as you do, the blue light begins to just gently shine from the pages, illuminating the room. And you begin to feel this deep sense of well-being and serenity, as if somehow emanating from the pages of that book, straight onto your face, onto your cheeks, and then through your body is that light, healing, relaxing. And you turn the page and there's a green light, seeming to heal and relax through you. Then you turn a page again, and another shade of light. You realize that somehow these books on this bookshelf are magic. And as you then reach forward and touch the sides of the bookshelf, so the whole bookshelf vanishes, and in place of the bookshelf, you just see the frame of that shelf, and you see an entirely new world, the other side. And you look back and your friend is just sat there in front of the fire keeping warm. And none of this has particularly made much sound, and they don't seem to be aware at all of what has just happened. And so you get their attention, and they looked over, startled by what they see. And you take your hands off the side of the bookcase, and all the books are back in place. And you wonder how this works from the other side, whether you'd be able to make it through again. And you don't know whether you want to explore it now, or whether maybe you'll come back here sometime in the future. And as you're wondering all this, so out of the window, you see that person and their cat walking past again. And you open the door. And you talk to each other about how you're seeing each other again. And they say that they're just continuing wandering, exploring, that they've headed one way, turned around, and now they're heading home. And you ask who owns this little shack. And they say they don't know. It appears to be abandoned. It's been here for years. That this cabin, they've never explored it themselves. And while you're having this conversation, so the cat comes up to the cabin, wanders into the cabin, and seems to enjoy being by the fire. And then it walks over to one of the walls, and it sits staring up in the corner. And at first, you don't notice, and no one else notices. Then after a while, you're aware that this cat, which is normally very friendly and makes itself known, You're aware that it hasn't been doing that. And this somehow, despite it being in action, seems to interrupt the conversation. And you find yourselves looking at the cat, wondering what the cat is looking at. And you go over to the cat and you ask the cat, almost expecting a response, what they're looking at. And you almost get down on the same level as the cat and you look up at the eye level of the cat, trying to see what they're looking at. They just seem to be sat there staring. And then you hear the floorboards creak slightly. And you don't think anything of it really. It's an old cabin. Until you notice the cat's eyes have moved. And you realize this cat seems to see something that's unseen. And so you pretend that you haven't noticed this. And you walk round in front of where the cat's looking, where its eyes are tracking. And you quickly step sideways to be in front of wherever they're looking. And you feel yourself bumped into. And as you get bumped into, so a person fully dressed in purple seems to almost decloak in front of you. And this startles everyone for a moment, but you quickly realize that they seem very friendly. And they explain that this is their cabin. They've lived here for centuries, that they look after the lock. They make sure that the magic here is looked after. And they're not really good with people, so they always make themselves disappear when people are around, hoping that people will just stay briefly before moving on and carrying on with their journeys. And it's rare for people to stay longer than that. The people normally are hiking from one location to another, but perhaps just need somewhere to rest very briefly. As they explain that they just make themselves invisible and stand in a corner, out of the way. People come in, they look around, they admire the place, and people normally then, once rested and refreshed, carry on with their journeys and are perfectly respectful of the environment of the cabin, and that in hundreds of years, you're the first to notice them. And so you ask them, if they're hundreds of years old, how long do they live? Who are they? Where are they from? And they explain that there was a time when there were wizards, there were witches, there are many creatures that are nowadays thought of as mythical, and that some things have passed into legend, and some of those legends are true, others are exaggerations of the truth. That there's even a lady who lives in the lake outside. It just turns out that there are stories about a lady in a lake, and they got the wrong lake, because the stories have travelled through time. And there's a sense of fascination at what's being told. And they ask what's through the portal or through that bookcase that they saw. And they say that's a connection to a spirit world, to a world where many of the mythical creatures still exist, a world where everyone's free to be themselves, where people don't hide the fact that they can do magic. People aren't afraid of dragons. The world there hasn't progressed in the same way as the world here. It's just one of those connecting points between the two worlds. But that you can never really go through there if you're just a normal human, because as soon as you release your hands from the bookcase, the portal shuts, and on the other side of the portal, there isn't a way back by doing the same thing. But there is ways humans can go through and can return, but it's best to have guidance to do that. And as it's getting later and later, they advise that that isn't something for them now. And the person with their cat, Tyrone, almost in a state of confusion, continues their journey. And the whole time this wizard was talking, the cat was rubbing themselves against him, circling through his legs, trying to climb up onto his lap. And he would pet that cat. And so they carried on their journey. And you and your friend carried your journey on, heading back to the hotel. And you knew that you'd be spending a couple more days here before heading all the way back to London, hoping that the train journey back will be more straightforward and less eventful than the train journey here, and that the entire experience has been an unusually eventful one, with two separate types of portals. A scientific portal you did pass through, and a magical portal you wanted to pass through. And you know you'll be wanting to come here on holiday again. And on arrival back at the hotel, aching a little from all the walking, you head down to the spa. You relax in a jacuzzi. And in that jacuzzi, the floating lotus flowers that just gently move on the surface of the water. As you lie back, close your eyes, and just feel the bubbles massaging your legs, around your belly, your arms, your back, and up around your neck. And then you go and spend some time in some of the spa rooms, smelling different smells, deeply relaxing. Then that night, heading to bed, knowing you've got more holiday to look forward to, more memories to make, and you feel so deeply and comfortably relaxed. You find it so easy to just drift and float asleep. And after a few days on holiday here, the two of you make an uneventful journey all the way home, arriving late at night in London, heading back to your home in London. And despite the pleasure of being away, there's a strange sense of even more pleasure at being back home, at sleeping in your own bed, settling down in your own bed. And you close your eyes and you begin to breathe so comfortably. And you drift asleep. And as you drift asleep, you almost have this sense of your eyes being open even though you know they're closed. And you know that's a sign you've gone so deeply and comfortably asleep. So deeply and comfortably asleep that you've begun dreaming, that you're lucid back in your dreams again. And you find yourself using this experience to learn, to piece together the knowledge, the wisdom of everything you've experienced, how the science and the magic may connect, how the dreams you had during your journey may be connected to all this. That you have this sense almost of floating out of your body, gaining a new perspective on everything. Having this sense of beginning the experience of deeply connecting and understanding the world. Having a tantalizing feeling of everything being just on the tip of your tongue and within grasp. With that sense of wonder and curiosity, knowing when you awaken in the morning you'll always feel so good and alert and refreshed. You enjoy the experience of drifting, floating, and relaxing asleep.